Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. Please use hashtag #LearningTuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect. So on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account @ReadingByThird. The webinar will begin shortly. Okay, once again, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage you to post any questions that you have during the conversation in the Q&A box. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be emailed on Friday to all who registered. And all resources that you see shared as links in the chat will be compiled and shared in a follow-up email to all webinar registrants as well. Finally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Lastly, before we begin, I would just like to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we invite you to join us for a session focused on advancing digital equity to support powerful learning. Next week, we have an exciting doubleheader, starting off at 12:30 with the Hurt Could Last a Lifetime, Data, Growing Gaps, and Rays of Hope. And then at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, an hour-long session sponsored by the Children's Funding Project on how states and communities are maximizing American Rescue Plan funding for kids in 2022 and beyond. Lastly, we'll wrap up the month of January with Families on Shaky Ground, Uncloaking and Addressing the Realities of Persistent Instability. More information and registration for these opportunities, including the special registration link for the January 18th 3 p.m. session, will be posted in the chat box. Joining you now is Jenny Atkinson, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thanks so much, Sierra, and I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Crucible of Practice Salon. We started this webinar series just over a year ago because one of the most common things we would hear from people in communities around the country was that they wanted ways to learn from each other. They wanted the opportunity to learn in a deep way about how other communities were making progress in the work to improve the early school success prospects of children from economically challenged families, neighborhoods, and communities. Usually in each of our Crucible Practice Salons, we hear from a community lead and other members of that coalition and community who speak directly to how they're doing this work and how they're partnering together to make positive change. I'm excited that today, instead of doing a deep dive exploration into one community, we'll be learning about a program happening in a number of communities in Mississippi. We're going to hear about why this program was created and how it's working in a number of different settings. Each of our presenters plays a different role, and together we'll get a picture of how the program Mission-Acceleration is helping young people in Mississippi to become better readers. We're joined by Samantha Cox, the site coordinator with the Tupelo and Lee County Early Childhood Coalition, Andrea Milton, an academic guide with Mission-Acceleration, Kimberly Price, intervention coordinator with the Oxford School District, Rachel Scott, Evaluation Associate at the Center for Research Evaluation at the University of Mississippi, and Carrie Lynn Summers, the Director of Community Impact at the United Way of Southeast Mississippi. We'll hear first, though, from today's moderator and presenter. Dr. Ashley Parker Shields has 17 years of experience in literacy education as a teacher and an evidence-based job-embedded literacy coach, which requires designing, delivering, and evaluating professional learning opportunities to improve literacy instruction and ultimately literacy achievement among pre-K through 12th grade learners. Always a middle school teacher at heart, Ashley has served as director of the Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading, as well as a project coordinator for a federal research study and a literacy consultant for national organizations, state level organizations, school districts, and nonprofit agencies specifically related to planning, implementing, and scaling evidence-based literacy practices and interventions. She currently serves as the director of MiSsionAcceleration, a statewide high-dosage tutoring model to accelerate reading growth among kindergarten through fifth grade learners. Ashley's passionate about designing and delivering quality learning experiences in the field of literacy instruction and was recognized for her dissertation work related to vocabulary instruction with a national award. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you, Campaign for Grade Level Reading team, for allowing us to be a part of this incredible opportunity today. We are really excited and really fortunate to share the work that's happening here in Mississippi, and I'm thankful to have several colleagues who are willing to share their voices from the ground. So what I thought might be helpful is to give you first the who, what, where, when, why behind MiSsionAcceleration. So a little context, this program was born out of need that was voiced by our Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities back in the summer and fall of 2020. At that time, obviously the pandemic threw everyone's plans out the window, and in discussing plans for out of school time efforts and after school programming, many of the communities continued to say, right now we're focusing on basic needs and meeting those needs in our community. And so the Center for Excellence in Literacy Instruction at the University of Mississippi, which houses the Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading, in which I was a former employee and served as a consultant, and now I'm an employee again, decided to take advantage of some of the opportunities with federal grants and local grants that were happening at the time for learning recovery. So we partnered with our Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities and did a joint proposal to use the governor's emergency education relief funds to come up with an innovative solution to all the challenges that the pandemic brought us, and obviously to combat the learning loss. So we created our own high dosage tutoring model that we intended to serve as a double dose of effective reading instruction. Tutoring can be viewed by lots of people in lots of different ways and defined differently, but we really wanted to come alongside schools and school districts that were working so incredibly hard to do as much as they could, many of them virtually and using alternative formats to school since many schools were closed. So the 7 communities that we ultimately are working with are across the state, you'll see in just a minute, and most ironically have direct access to colleges and universities. So we decided, let's bring college students on board to help us provide this double dose of reading instruction. And we wanted to partner directly with our out of school time providers and service those as a means to reaching children outside of school. And so the proposal was written for 4 consecutive semesters beginning last summer of 2021, this past fall, currently this spring, and again this summer of 2022. And we proposed 3 hours minimum for students that were in MiSsionAcceleration of this high dosage tutoring for about 35 weeks, 7 this past summer, 10 in the fall and spring, and 8 this upcoming summer, all to accelerate learning and reduce the effects of the instructional time lost during the pandemic. And the beauty of this is we really wanted to leverage our Campaign for Grade Level Reading communities, their partnerships and their resources in bringing in these grant funds to do this work. So the next slide has an overview of kind of our funding proposal, but the timeline, we did propose this in November of 2020 when much discussion was starting to happen around high dosage tutoring. We didn't have the fortune of some of the amazing literature that's come out since, but putting together a model using best practice and what we knew could be effective. We were funded in March of 2021 and ultimately kicked off in June of 2021. So that tight timeline, as you imagine, we were absolutely dependent on our existing relationships and our existing structures within these campaign coalitions. But the goals ultimately of MiSsionAcceleration were to provide this trifecta of support for struggling readers that were in grades kindergarten through 5th. using an evidence-based intervention with explicit and systematic academic assistance or tutoring in reading. We wanted a digital platform to deliver appropriate texts so that children could practice on their independent reading level, as well as to provide some opportunities for parents and our tutors and children to interact. And ultimately, we wanted to give these children meaningful connections. Many of them had been learning asynchronously and virtually, and while they were still connected with their teachers and some of their peers via Zoom, we really wanted to give another role model, inspiring resource to them in the form of a tutor, but ultimately to impact student achievement. We wanted to measure the impact that we could have on reading achievement, and you'll hear more about that in just a little bit. But we also wanted to just increase exposure to high quality reading instruction outside of the classroom. We knew it was already happening there. So to come alongside and to provide that in an out of school setting was the goal. And with our team, we realized very quickly that human capacity was going to be the number one goal in terms of helping us meet all of the things that we wanted to do with this project. So you'll also learn more about that. But ultimately, to ensure fidelity of programming, all of these pieces were put into use, and with the ultimate goal of serving 1,000 children in Mississippi in those grades, kindergarten through fifth, with 250 academic guides from colleges and universities across the state in these 7 communities. So I thought it would be helpful on the next slide for us to define what is high dosage tutoring, and in our case, what we're calling high impact, high dosage tutoring. So first, not all tutoring is created equal. We learned that very quickly in learning about some of the perceptions of tutoring. We wanted to make sure that we could get the benefits of small scale instruction in these settings and using our time wisely to do that. So we knew that in order for our tutoring to be successful, we had to give that dosage, making sure they had plenty of opportunities to receive this time on this academic reading instruction, but also the high impact that we were doing that at their grade level and of providing support to lift them up to grade level expectations that complemented what was happening in their classrooms. We didn't have time to go back and reteach everything, but our goal was to come alongside them and provide that support in their current grade levels. So ultimately, that high dosage tutoring being intensive and occurring on a sustained, frequent basis was the goal. So the characteristics of some of these high dosage tutoring programs and models that you have probably seen and read a bit about, but for us, we wanted to make sure we had that substantial time each week, but that we were building strong relationships between the students and their tutors and their community members that were a part of this. And that are a part of this, and close monitoring of that knowledge and skills using assessments to really drive what it is we were doing in terms of instruction, making sure we knew where the deficits were so that we could help meet those and fill those gaps. And aligning again with the grade level curriculum so that these students are getting grade level support where they were with what they needed. And then ultimately having that oversight of our tutors. We didn't want to just throw them out there and hope they were successful. We really wanted to ensure that they had the support necessary. So we built in some mechanisms to have support not only at their site, but programmatically for us to be able to support them throughout any of their given semesters in participating with this work. So our program was built on these tenets, but we knew we needed to have a strong curriculum. So we partnered with Voyager Sopris Learning to provide Voyager Passports as our scripted curriculum that our academic guides use in their tutoring sessions. These lessons are designed for Tier 2 intervention and instruction. So knowing that each lesson was about 30 minutes long and had all of the necessary components, the essential components of literacy instruction included, was really important to us. We wanted to make sure the content that we were providing met the goals that we were trying to achieve. And so using some formative assessment checkpoints along the way was important to us, and that was built into this Voyager Passports intervention. And so we knew if we had a strong intervention and strong resources in the tutors that we would have a better chance for success. But that wasn't the only piece we needed. We knew we also needed an assessment to not only see where students were coming in to our tutoring program, but ultimately to see where we had an impact and if we were able to impact reading growth. So the MiON reader component from Renaissance Learning became a huge asset to us. We were able to use the STAR reading assessment, it's on the next slide, to then cultivate, if you will, a personal reading library for these children so that they could not only have books that were motivating, but also have access to books that were on their instructional reading level for them to get that appropriate practice outside of just the tutoring session, but at any time that they could have access to their device, they could read appropriate text and engaging texts that were of interest, but also relevant in the instruction. And the beauty of MiON is that there's a read to me feature. So all of the students were able to at least listen to books on their instructional reading level, in addition to practicing reading those texts as well. So that's kind of the core components of the two vendors, if you will, that we use to create the content. And so on the next slide, we knew, since we were partnering with our Campaign for Grade Level Reading community, that we had to cultivate these partnerships in the partner sites on the ground. And so the Rockets on the state of Mississippi represent where we are currently in Oxford, Tupelo, Starkville, Vicksburg, Jackson, Hattiesburg, and Long Beach. Across the state, really prioritizing our nonprofit organizations, faith-based centers, the out-of-school time providers in these communities, as well as our school district personnel when they were involved with these coalition efforts, really using these resources to get access to the children who needed our programming the most. So it was essential that in the quick timeline that we had to build on these relationships and these resources to secure those partner sites that we knew we needed. Our goal was not to create new sites, but to come alongside current programming to build the instructional capacity of those on the ground, as well as to provide the additional resource and hands on deck with our tutors. And so you'll hear more from 3 of our communities in just a moment. But the next slide really just as we jump into the ground level work, just kind of delineates what the 3 roles and responsibilities are in our program on the ground in these communities. So our academic guides are the college students that are providing that intervention for 3 hours per week, and they're assisting in data collection with those assessments and preparing for those scripted lessons as a part of Voyager Passports. But the site supervisor, we learned very quickly we needed someone at each site that could be our eyes and ears on the ground, and that could be our point of contact to ensure fidelity of programming, but also to make sure needs were being met. And so managing those supplies and participating in some of those weekly feedback sessions became really essential to us to know what was happening in these 7 different places. And then the community lead in each community, a huge part, that community lead serves as the lead for their coalition, their Campaign for Grade Level Reading coalition in their community, but also as a lead contact for us in helping us identify these partners, reaching these colleges and universities in their area to recruit, and providing additional support, obviously as needed. So those were the 3 key roles that we knew we had to be very intentional about filling in each of these places. And so as I close and give you more information and context about what is happening on the ground, some of the keys on the next slide to our success so far, and you're going to learn more about this in our evaluation discussion towards the end, but just having that consistent small group instruction, the same academic guide or tutor works with the same 4 children across the semester. So building those relationships and that trust was a really important piece for us to help not only these K-5 scholars feel like they were being set up for success, but also for our academic guides to have some consistency in coming to sessions and to be able to meet those needs because they knew these children very well. And the intervention design and that independent reading practice that I mentioned, but that ongoing support. I felt like many models that we were reviewing, that was the piece that I wanted to make sure was critically involved in what we were trying to do, is that we didn't just put these people on the ground without continuing to support and monitor data and making sure we were making a difference. So with that said, I would love to turn it over to one of our esteemed community leads that has agreed to participate today. Carrie Lynn Summers, in addition to planning her own wedding this weekend, manages the grant funding process for partner agencies of the United Way of Southeast Mississippi, as well as internal programs in the area of education, health, and economic mobility. And Mission Acceleration falls under her job description. But she earned her master's in higher education administration from Indiana University and her bachelor's in chemistry from the University of Alabama, where she has published and presented her work in civic engagement, motivation, and the ethics of global service. And she has been involved with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in the Southeast Mississippi campaign for the last 5 years. So I'm excited for you to hear from Carrie Lynn and her perspective as a community lead in this project.
Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to hopefully share some information on kind of a practical logistics side for those of you that are community lead partners for your grade level reading coalitions. And so to give a little bit of context for Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is one of the areas that United Way of Southeast Mississippi serves, we have a coalition that is bursting with talent and resources and just helpful tidbits that have really been so helpful as we've been in this mission acceleration journey and learning different things. And so our coalition actually has representatives from 8 different school districts in our service area, but we have
a healthy number of individuals that service the Hattiesburg Public School District, which is where our mission acceleration tutoring is really honing in on. And so those partnerships were invaluable as we began to plan and implement mission acceleration. And they really brought an extra added value to how we have been implementing this program. And so, for example, Ashley kind of went over some of the different partners that that Mission Acceleration has been working with, but for our specific community, we had our early child care programs, early childhood professionals who are able to recommend us to after school program, child care centers that kind of know where the highest need is, but where there is also great infrastructure to run a program like this. And so we weren't really flying blind by just trying to select child care centers or after school programs. We also have public school contacts with our coalition, as I'm sure all of you or many of you do, who helped inform what was happening in the school district and what was available to students currently. And so that way we weren't duplicating efforts too much, or we could build on resources that already exist. We also have university partnerships. And so that looks like we have 4 different colleges and universities in our service area. And so by already having those partnerships formed when it came to trying to recruit academic guides or finding out more literacy resources in our area, but predominantly the recruiting of the academic guides, those partnerships were already formed. So there was a little bit less of that cold calling, cold emailing of trying to get the word out about the academic guides. And so they were really able to help us in the recruitment factor for that. And they continue to do that as we're always searching for new academic guides to fill in and serve as many students as we can in the community. But then we also have nonprofit partners. And so they've actually provided a bonus aspect of the program that has been really helpful, especially as we look to engage with the parents of our children. So for example, we had a day to really speak with the parents and go over their STAR assessments of their students and kind of explain what we were doing. But we had a nonprofit organization that runs a food pantry, and they had a number of kind of individual snacks and things that they don't typically give out in their food pantry bags. And so they put together these little bags for each of the kiddos, and with just a like motivational message, or just "you're amazing" and things like that. And that just added a little extra something to help engage with those families that wouldn't have happened otherwise if they didn't already exist within our coalition and know what we were doing. And so on the next slide, so meeting community needs as a community partner in this work, it's been so important for us to always respond to a community need that is requested to be met, as opposed to us dictating what the need is for our community and just providing, a one-to-one solution that wasn't asked for. And so that relationship with the public school district, with the after-school centers, not only was amazing for that, but the way that Mission Acceleration is set up takes that in mind. And so as you'll hear from the wonderful speakers that will follow me, every community is a little bit different because Mission Acceleration was set up in a way to meet the unique needs of each community and kind of be able to hone in on what's needed. And so we're able to adapt this program based on what works for us. And so for Hattiesburg, we are at child care centers, and we started at one and we are expanding to more. And we're able to, even within the child care centers, say, okay, these days work great for this child care center for this time frame. But for this child care center, we can do more days and cut back to that 30 minutes. But on another one, maybe it is the not as many days, but the longer time frame. And so there's some flexibility built into this program because it's known that every community is going to be a little bit different. And I have to say that I can't say enough about the wonderful work that the Hattiesburg Public School District is doing. But what we can do is if we can provide that added boost of support, that an effort to multiply what all of the work that they're doing by providing this high dosage tutoring, then we're ultimately serving each other. And so as we try to always approach it in that manner to show that, like, hey, we're not trying to step on toes. We're just trying to make the work that you're already doing be that much more valuable. And so ultimately then the needs and prioritizing the needs and finding the balance of working with after school sites. This is just kind of something as a community lead to be thinking about if you're going to implement a program such as this, but just looking at after school sites and what resources they do have, or what resources they don't have, the space, whether there's, those quiet spaces to do the tutoring programs, or is that a consideration to have, or even the bandwidth to provide such a program. And so whenever we approach child care centers with this program, it is never to take away from the work that they're doing. It is only if they're looking to supplement, or do they have the staff? Do they have the employees to have children in one room doing tutoring and being supervised, and children in another room working on their traditional homework help or whatever activity had been planned that day? But also making sure that, you're going to the child care centers where the students are needing it the most, and trying to meet those needs and really have a place to accelerate reading growth where maybe it wouldn't have otherwise. And so on the next slide, these are just a few photos from our Mission Acceleration community, but to give a little bit more detail about what Hattiesburg has been doing. So like I said previously, we have expanded to 2 more child care centers. So for spring, we will be working with 3 child care centers with their after school programs. And so, but acting as the community lead has been really an opportunity for us to act as an umbrella organization of support to help with coordinating those sites. So that way they're, as much as our site supervisors love working with Ashley and there's great communication and great partnership, it's nice to have that community lead who's in town. Hey, we need something XYZ. Having someone who knows the other organizations in the area, who might know of a restaurant who wants to support a parent engagement day or something along those lines, just being able to act as that support system in town and being able to serve where you are serving. We also act as a way to assist in the recruitment of AGs, so academic guides. So we work with the University of Southern Mississippi, William Carey University, Pearl River Community College, their Hattiesburg campus, and the Jones County Junior College down the road. And then also, because we do have multiple sites, they store all of their curriculum, all of their supplies throughout the semester that they need right there. But we keep stock of, extra hand sanitizer for when they run out, or in that off season during breaks, we can store things and make sure that the academic guides are returning their supplies and keeping track of that inventory to take some of the load off of the site supervisors in that way. And then also just acting as a central site for academic guides to submit paperwork and coordinating with Ashley. And so as they're doing their background checks, and so they're not trying to put something in the mail, they're bringing it straight to us in town, and then coordinating with our state lead, Ashley, to make sure that it all works smoothly and everything is secure. And so that's really everything that I have about acting as a community lead for this amazing program. And Ashley, I'll kick it back to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Carrie Lynn, and attendees. I'm sure you can sense Carrie Lynn's enthusiasm and excitement. She has been so wonderful to work with, and we are so fortunate to have her as such an advocate for children in her community. And Carrie Lynn mentioned flexibility, and I think this is a really nice way to segue into our next presenter. Any education intervention, we know, including tutoring, requires a formulated, calibrated approach. But it also has to depend on the students you're serving, whether the resources and existing infrastructure exist, and if those pieces need to be built. The time of day it's offered, whether it's in person, virtual, the curriculum you're going to use, the overall site culture, what will the leadership role be? So all of these factors, it is very much, that's one reason we've been so fortunate to have this as a pilot program to really investigate what's working and what do these individual communities need, so that we can be very intentional about the support that we provide. And so maintaining fidelity to our evidence-based principles while adapting to those specific needs in different contexts has been a challenge, but one that I have found to be incredibly rewarding. So our next speaker will share a different perspective in our Oxford community. Kimberly Price is a passionate research-based instructional strategist. She served in that role and has been involved in classrooms for over 15 years. She does serve as the intervention coordinator as one of them for the Oxford School District. And her main focus over the past few years has been increasing student achievement through cross-curriculum student engagement strategies, activities, and strategic interventions that supports not only the students, but the teachers and those involved. So she was a perfect fit for us to entrust our academic guides under her care. So she is a site supervisor for MiSsionAcceleration, and I'm going to turn it over to her to share with you her experience.
Thank you, Dr. Shields. How are you, everybody? I'm glad that you can make it. I'm happy to share the amazing work happening here at Oxford Intermediate and offer a different perspective on implementing the MiSsionAcceleration program. First, I would like to elaborate on my role as site supervisor and the intervention coordinator, and how connecting these two roles were important to serve the students in our building. As an intervention coordinator, it is my job to collect and analyze the data to support the interventions provided to our students through a multi-tiered system of supports. After researching programs to support our efforts with student interventions, I actually came into contact with Dr. Shields, who outlined all of the amazing components of this program, and I immediately started to connect the dots. In our district, we hold teacher support team meetings as a way for me to communicate with the faculty and staff to analyze student data and provide the proper support for struggling students. And this platform proved to be the best way to identify students to be served through MiSsionAcceleration. As a site supervisor for MiSsionAcceleration, I'm responsible for scheduling the academic guides and acting as their point of contact for all things MiSsionAcceleration. That includes attendance, orientation sessions to kind of let the academic guys know the school expectations, managing the supplies, just being a point person for session managements whenever issues arise that need to be handled by a certified staff member. I also participate in ongoing trainings and support for MiSsionAcceleration through our Friday feedback sessions, which are so important because we get to collaborate with other site supervisors and community leads to share amazing resources and ideas. And I also manage the data collection process of the program here at our school. So on the next slide, I'm going to get into talking about why we chose to implement the program a little different than an after-school program. So we chose to implement the program through Charter Time. And Charter Time is a 50-minute block of time built into a teacher's schedule that provides small group support for individual student needs. We chose to implement through Charter Time because of its convenience over an after-school program. So whenever we first started the idea of Mission Acceleration and we started to think of an after-school program, for us, an after-school program presented some budgetary issues because it would require some additional staff, and it also brought up the need for transportation for the students, or either, asking parents would they feel comfortable picking up and dropping off students. However, with Charter Time, we would have a consistent access to the students who had the greatest need. And all of that has had a great impact on our program attendance. And Charter Time also offers this smooth transition without involving the additional staff. So it really is, for the teachers, it is just allowing students to be tutored and no one else needed to be involved. It's just me being the point of contact for the AGs, and then creating this system where students were consistent with the tutoring that they were receiving every week. So on the next slide, we'll talk about overcoming the challenges that we found while implementing the program through Charter Time. And so while we eventually established a schedule and structure that would best serve our students, it didn't come without the challenges. Identifying the students to serve was the easiest part of what I did here as a site supervisor. All of the consent forms were educating the parents, and requesting the consent forms and scheduling the academic guides with unpredictable school schedules proved to be a challenge. And because of our initial COVID protocols in our district, I had to use a pre-recorded video, which I embedded in a QR code, and I attached to the parent consent form to educate the parents. So in this video, I explained how and why their students were selected, and I also explained some of the really cool components of the Mission Acceleration program. So even with the video and sending it out to parents to get them to sign the consent forms, of course, we had a staggered response, and we had a delay in the response because parents still didn't understand. So in addition to creating that video, I had to make several follow-up calls to gain the trust of our parents to allow their students to participate in this program. So when calling those parents, just one of the biggest questions is, well, how does this impact my student? How is this going to help my student? And so you just had to gain the trust of the parents. And eventually I received all of the consent forms. However, I had to get them back in a variety of different ways because of the time crunch from actually just everybody just not really understanding the program. So I had to offer flexible options for them to be able to send those back to me. As far as scheduling for the academic guides, I worked with teachers to find optional times for students to be served, therefore giving me a greater opportunity to be flexible and secure the tutors for our students. So some of our AGs, they weren't able to be consistent with the same exact time every single day. And so just by working with the teachers on a flexible schedule, I really wanted to secure the tutors because I really wanted this support for our students. And so I was just happy to be able to, provide that flexibility. On the next slide. So despite the many challenges that we found with implementing Mission Acceleration throughout the school day, with that hour of Charter Time, the efforts proved to be worth the time. I mean, just to see the relationships that are built, amongst the AGs and the 2Ts. At first, it starts off a little timid, but once they start to dig into the components of Mission Acceleration, and then, the AGs get really creative with the way that they deliver the content to the students. Sessions became fun. And, I had teachers telling me, hey, my student really doesn't want to graduate if they ever have that opportunity from this program. This is something that they would like to do consistently. And so to have such a program that supports both the students and the teachers is so amazing. This program has helped to build relationships between those academic guys and the students, and that is the most powerful component of the program. So I was so impressed with what I saw firsthand at Oxford Intermediate. I felt compelled to advocate for other students and teachers in our district. So I'm excited to share that in the spring, we will be expanding this program to 4 other schools in our district to serve a greater number of students. The models will all be implemented to serve students through charter time. And however, the best part of all of this is that we will have a connection of site supervisors throughout our district who all serve students in the same capacity. So most of the site supervisors will be those intervention coordinators who work on a day-to-day basis, and we know which students need the service, and we know how to get those students implemented into the program. So I look forward to serving and working alongside my coworkers and the amazing members of our statewide Mission Acceleration team to continue the amazing work that this program provides for our students. And so I'm going to kick it back over to Dr. Shields.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. I am absolutely blessed to have her as a part of our program and to serve as site supervisor and to be such an advocate for our program. It's really nice when someone is an advocate for children and an advocate for a really strong program that will benefit them, and to do what it takes to work out all those kinks. And as Kimberly mentioned, we had a summer program in Oxford prior to this fall last summer, and it was wonderful because we had access to these children at the summer program. But when that summer program went away, that's when we realized, due to COVID and due to some other protocols, some of the after school programming weren't really allowing us or anyone for that matter to come into their facilities to limit exposure. And so for Kimberly to come in and step in and say, we can absolutely figure out a way to do this during the school day so that the children who need it the most can receive this instruction, was a win for us and a win for those children. And also, rightfully so, to be skeptical of a new program. We know lots of times there's lots of new innovative things happening in education, sometimes built on best practice, sometimes just, so rightfully so for some of those parents to be a little bit apprehensive. But thankfully, there was a high level of trust in the Center for Excellence in Literacy Instruction at the university, due to previous formatting and programming and coordination of efforts. So I think that really helped us jump into this project a little quicker than maybe if we had to build a reputation all on our own. So we're very fortunate to be housed there. So our next speaker is also a site supervisor, and she served with us this past summer and fall, and will continue to serve this spring in Tupelo, Mississippi. Samantha Cox is a retired public school teacher that taught with the Tupelo Public Schools for 26 years. She, during that time, taught 2nd and 3rd grade, but she also supervised student interns from several colleges and universities in the area. And she provided the professional development for the district on technology, arts integration, and various professionalism resources. But she decided she wanted to keep busy during retirement. She couldn't stay away. And she feels obviously her involvement and her dedication to her community and to education and to children, that Mission Acceleration was a nice fit for her to continue doing much of what she loved in the classroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Samantha. She is a community impact volunteer with the United Way, and obviously represents the Tupelo Early Childhood Coalition in their Starts with the Arts program. So excited for you to learn from her and to hear her experiences. Samantha?
Thank you, Ashley. As Ashley said, I'm a retired school teacher. So this role as site supervisor just rolled right into my wheel of knowledge. But I do serve as the site supervisor for Mission Acceleration, but my site is very different from the site that Ms. Price just described. My community lead is Shelley Brooks. She's the director of the Early Childhood Coalition, which is a United Way program. She was able to identify and recruit a local nonprofit agency named El Centro for our Mission Acceleration partnership. El Centro has served the Hispanic-speaking community for over 15 years in Tupelo, And as you can see, it's an organization that helps facilitate Hispanic integration into the community through education, training, and services. El Centro also provides services such as after-school tutoring, adult English classes, and workshops on a variety of topics, and really helps the Hispanic-speaking family as a whole integrate into the society. Because El Centro previously provided after-school homework help, there was already an established meeting time for K-5 students. So scheduling our Mission Acceleration tutoring time, it was a really smooth transition. During the summer, we met on Tuesdays and Thursdays for tutoring. And then in the fall, we added Wednesday to the program so that we could really just make sure that we could meet and better serve the students. They already had a pool of students that they were working with, but the director also let parents know about our services and our program. And she was just inundated with parent requests to help children that were struggling with their reading. You can see in the picture, we currently serve 28 students and academic guides. We meet 3 afternoons each week for a total of 4 hours of reading intervention, which I think that's incredible. Next slide. The director has always made coming to El Centro just tons of fun. She's very child-centered, and we're able to provide a really special environment for learning. The students just enjoy a relaxed vibe and you can see on their little sweet faces how they just really enjoy coming to El Centro. El Centro's Mission Acceleration, we meet in a historic church in Tupelo that now is dedicated to serving nonprofit organizations. The church no longer meets there. And because of this, we have our academic guides are able to set up in creative spaces. So very different from what a classroom or what the students might find at school. The students benefit from this scientifically based intervention program. The instruction is on grade level and it is rich with grade level text, but still provides interventions and support for the students. The lessons within this program are quick and ever changing. It might, do some fluency, then they'll move to vocabulary and then move to word work. So the kids are never bored during any of our tutoring sessions. Our students come to El Centro from 6 different elementary schools in Tupelo. There's 3 K2 schools and 3 3-5 schools. And out of the school setting, the students have seemed less intimidated and willing to step out and try new things and make mistakes that they may normally not try if they're among their peers at school. One struggle that we had of working with Mission Acceleration in a partner site versus a school setting has been attendance. And I completely understand, parents, and they pick up their kids from school, they've had a long day, everybody's tired, want to go home and just snuggle in. And we compete with soccer and dance and gymnastics. But luckily, our parents are committed to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity for their kids. So we did start several incentive programs to increase attendance and reward students who made the commitment to attend. So slime and poppets have really increased attendance. And there's a picture of one of our first groups of perfect attendance for the week award winners. Students have really fallen in love with the MiSsion program. We were able to issue each Mission Acceleration student a Chromebook through a donation of retired technology from our Tupelo Public Schools. So students have access to books at home through the MiSsion program. Even without Wi-Fi, students can download books to their device while they're with us at El Centro with the Wi-Fi there, and read offline when they get home. And then when they return to Wi-Fi, their progress is uploaded. I created in the big El Centro classroom that they do have, I created a Mayan wall where each student received their own little rocket. And for every 30 minutes that they read, they were able to advance their rocket across the wall with little puffs of smoke in their trail of their rocket trail. And we gave weekly rewards for all the students who met their Mayan goals. And this really worked to increase independent reading. And I noticed just in my supervisory capacity walking around, lots of improvement in their confidence and their fluency as I watched them in their small group setting. And then for parents and our partner side on the next slide, our director, she is very dedicated to her Hispanic community, and her excitement about our program is just heartwarming. She counsels parents and students, and sometimes when we need our students to bring their electronic devices to tutoring, she'll communicate with parents about these needs. And even she secured a donation for each student to receive a backpack to carry the Chromebooks and the chargers to and from tutoring to home. And while our students are mostly English speaking, our parents are not. So we rely heavily on the El Centro staff to translate. But these are some of the most wonderful parents I've worked with in all of my years of working with parents. These parents are eager to listen and to share student success. They welcome any helpful ideas about ways to encourage their students at home or things they can do at home with their students. And just the sense of community felt among this group of parents is really special. You can feel that each parent is there to help their child become, more successful and a more fluent reader. Now, one of the most important parts of our program are our academic guides. Our El Centro guides are priceless. We don't have a major university home campus in our area. We do have satellite, I guess you call it, universities of the University of Mississippi and a community college. The college student pool in our area, so that we choose from, is not full of traditional college students. So most of our academic guides are married with children and are returning to college to finish their degree or earn an advanced degree. Their level of dedication is just immeasurable. They come to tutoring sessions well prepared to present lessons and interact with students. They ask for my advice or my help whenever they need it. They find creative ways to bond with their students, and they too understand the struggle of being at school all day and then coming to an extra practice for another hour and a half. And so they really do their best to be friendly and welcoming and keep the lessons on track. Some of them can get a little distracted because they'd rather play with their friend than study at the moment, but they are just really wonderful with the students. The students love their teachers and are eager to find them and get started each afternoon when they get there. And our schedule does allow for students to continue to receive the homework help from the other tutors, which is really important with this community because the Hispanic speaking parents feel an extra sense of not being able to help the kids with their homework because themselves are unable to read and communicate in an English speaking classroom. So the kids stay a lot longer. They finish with their MiSsionAcceleration lessons. Then we have snack, and then they do homework help with the other tutors from MiSsionAcceleration. From El Centro. And our guides have even started staying to help hand out snacks and even stay and help with the after school homework help. That's how dedicated they are. many of our guides are going to return for the spring semester, and the one or two that can't, they were just almost in tears as the semester came to an end. And we are still trying to work out creative ways that we could get their tutoring sessions met. But it was just so heartwarming too to see them and their dedication to their students, and how much they cared. Thank you, Ashley.
I'm on mute. Thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing that perspective. And we are so fortunate to have you a part of this. And Samantha mentioned a lot of great things that were very relevant when we proposed Mission Acceleration. It was for settings just like Samantha described, a nonprofit that's serving children in out of school time settings. And so many of the partner sites in our program are just that, these after school faith-based programs and nonprofit organization programs that are doing that. We did have two communities that chose the during the school day model, but the rest are largely our community partners. And so we're very fortunate to have the Early Childhood Coalition there in Tupelo County and the United Way. Really, those relationships are immeasurable. So wonderful. So thank you so much. Samantha mentioned the semester format, and I thought I would just interject here. Because college students' schedules change every semester, we decided that we would also have to accommodate those schedules in serving children. So that's why the summer we have the 7 weeks, but we have 10 weeks this past fall and 10 weeks this spring. But there are tutors that unfortunately won't move forward because they have labs or internships or other things. So we do bring in new academic guides each semester, and you'll see a little bit more about that scalability in just a second. But we are fortunate to have an academic guide who has served with us both the summer and fall semesters, and Andrea is just incredible in every way. So I'm really excited for you to hear from her. But she is originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and is a junior at the University of Mississippi, majoring in biology with a chemistry and Spanish minor. She is a member of the Mississippi Rural Physician Scholarship Program and has served as an academic guide for Mission Acceleration, as I mentioned, both semesters. But my favorite, I have a lot of favorites, traits about Andrea, but when I asked her about wanting to be a tutor while planning to be a doctor, she had this to say. She said, in my opinion, being a doctor is much more than being a person who will do checkups and write prescriptions. It has to do with serving your community. As a person who intends to serve in rural and underserved areas, I do so because I have a heart for helping those who may unfairly not be able to receive quality care, whether it is for educational purposes or health purposes. Everyone deserves and has a right to quality education and health care. And being a rural physician and Mission Acceleration academic guide helps to close the gap. So we are incredibly fortunate to have Andrea share with us her experiences. And on the next slide, you will see our criteria for what serving as an academic guide is. So our college students must have a 3.25 GPA or higher. They must be enrolled at a Mississippi college or university in any capacity. It can be undergraduate, graduate, full semester or full coursework, or part-time student. They must show that they've been successful in their own academic careers. So we look at their transcripts to really make sure they themselves have performed well, especially in English and reading courses. And we have had them successfully complete a background check, and they must complete the necessary training. So we say that they're the best and the brightest, and they very much are. So Andrea, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Mission Acceleration, and a little bit of background as to what played a big role into me joining Mission Acceleration. I attended the Jackson Public School District for the majority of my academic life, and let me tell you, it is the second largest school district in Mississippi. And so I know there are like 7 high schools. I cannot even count how many middle schools and elementary schools there are. And the story that stuck out to me when I heard about this program, when I was in the 9th grade, my English teacher pulled me aside right after we had taken our benchmark and she had gotten our scores back. And she was congratulating me, telling me about how I was in the 9th grade, but I had scored on a college level. But right after that, she had told me about how our entire grade as a whole scored around in 5th grade. We were all in 9th grade. And so a lot of that didn't have anything to do with us, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure it had a lot to do with the shortage of teachers that we had, which meant larger class sizes, as well as a lack of funding and resources and materials. And I know for me, I attended a private school from around pre-K to 4th grade. I transitioned to public school around my 5th grade year. And so I think that had a lot to do with the reason why I was pretty good when it came to reading and comprehending. But everyone does not have that opportunity. And so with Mission Acceleration, like I said, I went to private school from pre-K all the way up to 4th. Those are some of the main grades that we focus on, because that is around a time where you learn how to read, what to read, and how to comprehend. And so when you get older, it's a lot harder to break those cycles of what you already learned. And so my experience as an academic guide, I have loved both. I've done both in person and virtual. When I did in person this summer, I made sure that it was in Jackson because I did want to serve my own community. And my experience there, I absolutely loved it. I had about 3 students at the beginning. I think it did increase a little bit by the end of the summer. But seeing those kids get happy when they saw me, I'm pretty sure that part of the reason was because I just was friendly with them. I talked to them like they were around my age, but of course, age appropriate. And I love seeing the fact that they were excited to get their books just to go over a lesson. And so in person was definitely a favorite of mine. Virtual was great as well. I did that during the fall semester. And I had one student, he was amazing. He was always on top of things, and it really did help for the relationship to be formed. And for me, when it came to virtual, I was kind of apprehensive about changing to virtual because of the fact that it is a lot harder to develop that relationship since it is on a computer. But I knew that it was just fine when I had to miss a lesson with him. I had to have a sub in because I had a conference. But when I came back the next day, he was telling me about how much he had missed me, and that really did kind of warm my heart, because that meant that even though it was virtual, I was still making an impact on this student to the point where he was upset because he couldn't learn because he didn't have his normal tutor. And so I love the fact of both of them. It just depends on how you do it and the relationship you develop with the students, regardless of how you do it. And like Dr. Shields mentioned at the beginning, I have no intentions of teaching. I do not have a background in education, but I do have a heart for it. And I think that's honestly all you need. And I know for me, it really, really helped to have a script. We have a script where it says exactly what you need to say, what to expect from the students. And of course, I would go over at the beginning just to make sure that I knew what I was saying and how to say it so they could say it correctly as well. And if I needed to add anything to make it kind of more interesting for the students, I did that as well. So having a script help. It doesn't matter if you have a background in education. It mainly just matters about how you would like to help the students in Mississippi overall in the education system. And so that is it. Thank you, Dr. Shields, for having me speak.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for your voice and sharing your experiences with us. And I am, again, so incredibly fortunate. And in case you can't tell, that I get to work with people like this every day. It is all of my greatest joy come to life, seeing these community leaders and these site supervisors and these college students rally around children and reading instruction and literacy promoting that in this program has most definitely been a career success. But on the note that Andrea mentioned about majors and the idea of being a teacher, we saw this as a potential for a pipeline for educators and using this as an experience for those that chose education as high quality field experience for them. But we didn't limit it to education majors because we knew there were college students like Andrea that had the passion for helping children and the goal of making a difference and giving back to their community and providing them an opportunity to do that. So that support and that ongoing discussion about the components of literacy instruction, how that looks, following that script with fidelity, all of those those things became really important as we ventured into getting to know them and getting to know the curriculum that they were using. So I will turn it over now to our last speaker. Rachel Scott is an evaluation associate at the Center for Research Evaluation, or CER, at the University of Mississippi. They are our outside evaluator. Her focus is working with education clients to help them determine if their work is having a positive impact. And her previous roles in education have been at all levels of K-12 schools, including director of magnet programs for a small urban school in the South, director or instructional facilitator and magnet coordinator for a nationally recognized design theme magnet school, as well as the district's instructional technology specialist and an AP science teacher. She earned her Bachelor of Studies in 2010 and Master of Science in Instructional Technology in 2014 from Texas A&M University at Texarkana, and her Education Specialist degree in Educational Leadership in 2017 from Arkansas State University. So I will turn it over to you, Rachel, to share more about the evaluation that's happening with Mission Acceleration.
Thank you for that introduction, Ashley. Like Ashley said, I work at the Center for Research Evaluation based out of the University of Mississippi. We have the privilege of working with clients to help them determine their impact. For Mission Acceleration specifically, our evaluation really has two focuses. One, to generate feedback on program design and implementation, to inform ongoing decisions about design and implementation, how they progress through the scaling process of the 4 semesters, but also to look at what are the barriers and facilitators to success, with the eye towards doing a dosing study at the end and looking at a cost effectiveness analysis of, what is the actual investment for this tutoring intervention. If we look at the next slide, we can talk about how we're collecting data. There's really 4 main phases to our data collection. The first phase was the preparation phase. This occurred really in the summer. It consisted of key informant interviews as we worked to generate a logic model for the program. We also are iteratively going through the implementation and outcome phase for each of the semesters as we look at what is the academic guide experience? Are they growing in their knowledge? What feedback can they give us to help refine program design as we meet with the program team, and as we look at student outcome data using STAR reading scores. At the end, we'll conduct a dosing study and then also look at that cost-effective analysis I mentioned. As we look at the next slide, you can see the logic model. This was created or generated through the use of key informant interviews, which ranged from community partners, school districts, the academic guides, program leadership. And the goal of the logic model was really to help identify what were those key inputs, activities, and outputs that were necessary to have short-term outcomes for students and lead to these long-term outcomes as we look to reverse COVID learning loss, and also have more students reading on grade level in this state. This is also helpful as a tool and resource for the program staff as they're meeting with new communities or new sites to bring the program on, or in having a conversation with academic guides to say, what does it really look like to be a tutor? What are the types of things I'm going to be expected to do? And how is it contributing to the program goals as a whole? When we start to look at how do we measure or evaluate this project, if you'll go to the next slide. I forgot something. One of the first things that we did for part of the summer pilot was to look at the actual intervention design. I know Ashley addressed several parts of this in the beginning, but it was also very important for us as evaluation group who was providing that feedback on design components to do a review of the literature and look at, how does the funded proposed design match up to best practice literature on reading interventions, high dosage tutoring. And so that was a really, I think, great way to get entrenched in the program and help as an evaluator or an outside evaluator, guide those questions about what are program non-negotiables, what are things that can be determined by the community site with that strong literature base to guide it. We looked at what is a definition of high dosage tutoring, what is moving towards that implementation level that we need. Is there an ideal number of sessions or number of weeks that we need to see for a student? We also looked at the need on the next slide as we talk about having those volunteers that are highly trained and supported. The training component, I know I saw a question come in just a second ago. It may have been answered at this point. You know, the academic guides don't necessarily come in with a reading background. And so for the program team and those site supervisors and communities, they have to provide that wraparound support to make sure that academic guides understand the content, have the resources that they need so that they feel comfortable delivering that intervention. Because when our academic guides feel comfortable, our students are going to feel comfortable because there is going to be that mentoring relationship that has been so beautiful to see happen with these college-aged academic guides that the students can really readily connect with, which is helping drive these academic gains that we'll see and talk about in just a second. When we look at how we measure or what are the key metrics for the evaluation, there are several that we are looking at. If we'll go to the next slide. We are looking at what is the site. So currently we are in 8 sites. It started in the program with fewer, and so we're seeing that scaling start to happen. We're working with academic guides. Currently, we have 200 scholars that have been part of the program, 28 of which have participated in both semesters. There have been over 150,000 minutes of tutoring that have occurred and been delivered by those 55 academic guides across 80 days, or that 17 weeks of the program. For how we define the different program components, we look at several different key metrics. One of the things that we're looking at is dosage. What are the total minutes of tutoring that a student is receiving across the semester? We're looking at tutoring sessions, both the frequency, like how many days a week does it occur, but also what is the total number that are occurring over that time period. We're looking at attendance rate, and this has been a very interesting metric to look at, especially in the different types of programs. We examine the setting. Is it taking place in a school or a community organization? Is it a school day setting, or really after school is kind of how that's fallen out for the fall. We're looking at group size. What is the tutor to student or scholar ratio? How long are they experiencing tutoring in each session? We're looking at the format. Is it the tutoring occurring in person or virtually? And we're also looking at what I think y'all are probably here to hear a lot about, you know, what's happening with their STAR reading scores. And for us in this program, one of the conversations we had early on with program staff was the need to use the unified scale score for STAR literacy, because it speaks across early literacy and the STAR reading assessments. And we have students who we are seeing movement across that as they persist in the program. And so that's why we use the unified scale score. And we also convert that to a grade equivalent score because we want, we know when we're dealing with school communities and also talking to parents, a scale score really doesn't say anything to them, but you know if your child is on grade level or not, and if they're experiencing growth. And so what we're looking for in this program and really trying to assess and measure is, are they not only having growth or gains, but we're looking for acceleration or more than expected growth for these students in the period of time. Let's look at some data from the summer and the fall and kind of a quick comparison of the two. That's on the next slide. A lot of the implementation from the summer to the fall, as we go down that list of metrics, you're going to see a lot of similarities. We've been able to see an increase in the average dosage or number of minutes of tutoring that a student is experiencing across the period of time. So again, from 754 minutes to 778 on average for the fall. The session frequency has also been able to increase. The range has stayed roughly the same, but we have more students experiencing tutoring 3 to 4 days a week. And I think that's part of the beauty of the school day setting. Kind of the flip to that is looking at, if we go down the duration, as we have entered school day settings, the tutoring session length has shortened because we have to fit into things like what Kimberly mentioned, which is charger time, which is going to be more of a traditional intervention block of 30 to 40 minutes. Attendance was a struggle this semester. However, we're seeing gains, and I think that's really due to a lot of the efforts of those community partners and our site supervisors to make sure that students and parents know the importance of attending tutoring sessions, and also some of the programs they put in place to encourage them, like what Samantha spoke about with some of the incentives of really making sure students are excited to attend this program. For the format, summer largely occurred in person. There was a few hybrid sessions for the fall. We saw that really sites determined how they were going to deliver tutoring, what best fit their schedule and their needs. And so we saw both in person, some sites doing that, and then other sites using fully virtual formats with tutors that were delivering tutoring sessions via Zoom or Google Meet. What's great is that in both of the semesters, we are seeing growth in students and true acceleration. So we used a STAR assessment, and I know that was one of the questions. That is something that Mission Acceleration in partnership with the Center for Excellence in Literacy Instruction at the University of Mississippi provide, is the testing platform. And so all students are being assessed using STAR reading or early literacy test. And so that is something that I think from an evaluation standpoint is really key, is that it's not, oh, this school does MAP testing, this school does STAR testing. We have a consistent assessment platform for all students who are participating, and then also consistency in when pre and post testing is going to occur. And we'll talk about that. But for the average reading growth for the summer, we saw an average of 4 months growth in 7 weeks time. And then for the fall, we have seen an average of 4 months growth in 9 weeks time. And so that is acceleration in both cases, which is very exciting and I think promising for the program to only be in the second semester. When we go to the next slide and look at the program across community sites, because I know y'all are Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and these are all campaign organizations. We do see some variability in growth across the sites. I think that is one of the things. An average student is experiencing 4 months growth. We have some sites that are experiencing more growth, some that are experiencing a little less. One of the things from the summer that was so key, and I think we saw a lot of improvement as we moved to the fall, was in the consistency in pre and post testing. During the summer, as I mentioned, there were some issues with attendance. And so I know those community sites, those site supervisors worked really, really hard to emphasize the importance of pre and post testing so we can help measure students' growth and also target the interventions in the best way possible. For the fall 2021, you'll see the expansion in the amount of community sites. If we look at the next slide. Like I said, you'll see the expansion in the number of community sites as they start to go through that process of scaling up. You also see greater percentage of matches for the number of students that are being pre and post tested using STAR literacy. And you're seeing that growth for students on an average of 4 months across the 9 weeks of the program. So when we look at kind of what are the lessons learned or the key takeaways if you're considering implementing an intervention similar to this, if you want to look at the next slide, I have those kind of listed or summarized. One of the things that we learned from this summer, and this is really lifted up by those academic guides who are so insightful, was that there was a need for on-site orientation. With college students that are coming from all these different communities, going into community sites or school sites, there was a need to have that on-site orientation that was implemented for fall 2021. Another thing that came out of the evaluation for the summer and the feedback was the need to have weekly check-in calls, and that's that ongoing support and training, and that occurs for academic guides, the community leads, liaisons, and site supervisors, and will continue into the spring. I think for program leadership, knowing and communicating those non-negotiables of the program design is a key feature. That's going back to that best practice evidence and research. What do you really have to have, and what can be determined of what can be variable based on community needs and the site needs, because I think that's the beauty of the program, is it can work across different communities. One thing that I really see is that this is such a relationship-driven work. I think the quick turnaround from funding to implementation in this summer would not have been able to happen if program leadership, Dr. Shiles, had not been able to tap into those networks that were established through those campaign sites. I think that has been a key part. I'll also see that it's relationship-driven work with the academic guides and those students, those scholars, and they're having to make that connection, and they look forward to seeing each other. The final thing I would say is, and this has just been echoed again and again by the academic guides, is that scripted intervention or curriculum is really a key component. The beauty of this program is it's not just education majors. Students are coming, or college students are coming from all backgrounds. And so that puts everyone on a really level playing field. It's also super exciting to see the education majors echo that this is something that they feel like is just critical to their experience as teachers, because they're getting to practice delivering interventions, differentiating instruction in that small group setting. So that is, I think, another key component of the program. I know I'm going to turn it back to Ashley, and she wants to talk about scaling.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We are forever indebted to your work. It is not easy navigating this evaluation, let me tell you, but she has done it masterfully. If you could go to the next slide. And I did have a question from Kira. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I know you mentioned what assessments are we using, and obviously Rachel did say that we are using the STAR Reading and STAR Early Literacy as our pre and post, and this spring we plan to have one midpoint check. But there are formative assessments built into the Voyager Passports intervention. So after every 5 lessons, there is a checkpoint, an adventure checkpoint it's called. And for those that don't meet 80% mastery on that checkpoint, there is differentiation that is identified for them in each of the components. So if they didn't hit 80% mastery in the reading, or I'm sorry, in the comprehension portion, then there are some specific strategies that the academic guide goes through with them. So I hope that helps, that I answered a question, that we did have that pre and post, and then that formative for ongoing assessment for us to kind of make sure we are in fact meeting those deficits. And Rachel is and Sear, they are not a part of Mission Acceleration. They are an outside evaluator. They are also at the University of Mississippi, but they are not affiliated with us as far as programmatically. So on this slide, as we wrap up and we turn over to any other questions that you have, I just wanted you, as I mentioned earlier, scalability is the hardest thing with any intervention, and growing wisely has been, we've been very intentional about how we do this so that we can learn each iteration or semester that we implement Mission Acceleration, that we can really learn from what's working, what isn't working, what do we need to do differently, so that at the end of this, we really do have, we hope, a program that will continue to be one that impacts children and raises and accelerates student reading growth for years to come. But in the summer, as Rachel mentioned, we did have 24 academic guides. This fall, we had 40. In the spring, we have 102 currently slated. So we're excited that it has literally doubled. We went from 86 kindergarten through 5th grade students in the summer to 114 this fall to 540 on the book for spring. 5 partner sites in 5 of our communities this summer, to 8 partner sites this fall, to 16 partner sites across 7 communities slated for this spring. And ultimately that 10 weeks of tutoring, again, on top of the 17 weeks that we've already provided for some children. There will be children that will obviously continue and children that will enter our program for the first time this semester. So navigating all of that gracefully is definitely a challenge, but we are being very intentional about the steps that we're taking and the feedback we're getting through our evaluation team, and are fortunate to have that. So we appreciate your time and your commitment to listening to this webinar. I know we shared a lot with you, so I'm going to check the question and answers, and campaign staff, if there's anything else you need from us, please don't hesitate. Oh, I see one question. Sorry, Jenny, about, can you share what happened with the site D that had no growth? It's interesting, right? Data doesn't lie. Data definitely systematically tells us what's happening. But I can also tell you, we learned very quickly that you have to be very intentional about the protocols for testing. You can't promise kids time outside or time to do something else when they finish their assessment in out of school programs, because as you can imagine, digital assessment is click, 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 finished. So we did unfortunately learn the hard way that our testing protocols are important and that they do matter. So that's something we have definitely taken into consideration as far as now testing fewer students at a time, having that supervision and that scripted role set out. So do make sure, remember, if you are in a partner site that is not affiliated with school, where testing is it's normal, right? It happens all the time. If you're in out of school settings where testing is not the common occurrence, to set up those protocols. Honestly, I can't speak on all behalf, but I would imagine a good bit of that specific site unfortunately was impacted by those protocols. And then there was a question, is there data on students that participated in both summer and fall? Those 28, yes. And Rachel, I don't know if you want to comment on that, since you said you would on live.
Yeah, that's no problem. So for that cohort of students that participated in summer and fall, we are seeing on average about 7.5 months growth across the 17 weeks of the program. So they are maintaining that rate of acceleration, even with across the 2 semesters. We will have more students that are persisting into the spring, and so we'll be able to increase that sample size. But that is something that we're continuing to monitor, especially as we look at, is there a magic dosage that we can get to see this acceleration? And is there a tipping point where it starts to taper off? And so that's things that we're really interested in for the summer of 2022 and then spring of 2022.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any other questions?
We have time for a real short one if anyone is typing furiously right now. Otherwise, Ashley has been really great at answering the questions that have come up in the Q&A box, typing in some answers, and thank you, Rachel, for your answers. So feel free to look at those if you haven't already. How can we support your work, someone says.
Shout it from the rooftops. Anything you learned today, please take it, use it, steal it. We want as many children across the country to benefit from high dosage tutoring. But supporting our work in Mississippi, we would love that, since our funding does end September of 2022. We are currently pursuing other funding opportunities, but follow us on social media, reach out to us via our website or email. Would love to share some more specific ways you could support us, but we are just very fortunate that the greatest support is being a part of this today. And then Kira asked a question about making sure your work is equitable. Does your AG training take that into account? Absolutely. We are trying to do more and more in terms of equity and thinking about resources and how those are distributed. We, as Mission Acceleration, provide all of the intervention materials, all of the supplies, all of the necessary, the accounts, all of the things they will need to do Mission Acceleration. We don't depend on any supplies or site-based things, so that every site has the exact same materials and supplies. But On top of that, really just making sure that we are culturally responsive and have a diverse pool of academic guides, and making sure that that diversity is reflected not only in the communities and our K-5 scholars, but in our academic guides as well. So sorry, I know that was a short answer to a very in-depth question, but thank you for posing that.
Well, I want to just thank all of our presenters today, Ashley, for being such an amazing moderator, and all of you for your really thorough and thoughtful discussion about how you've set up and are implementing and evaluating, and giving us some real on the ground tips, as well as big picture sense of how to set up and implement a program like this. So thanks to all of you, Ashley, Andrea, Carrie Lynn, Samantha, Kimberly, and Rachel. And I also wanted to thank our participants. It's been so great to have a chat, the conversation continuing in the chat, as well as those who answered questions and enriched our conversation in that way. So thanks to everyone who joined, and we will look forward to seeing you at another GLR Learning Tuesday webinar. We have one coming up this afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern Time on advancing digital equity to support powerful learning, and then as well 2 on January 18th and 1 on January 25th. So please, we'd love to have you sign up and join us for one of those webinars in the future. And we will look forward to hearing from you and seeing you then. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.